With the new blog post about Project L coming out explaining the development team's thought process of creating characters for the League of Legends fighting game, my mind has been consumed with thoughts and theory-crafting potential champions that could be in the roster. And as a random guy who plays League and fighting games, I am most definitely the most qualified person to talk about potential designs for champions in Project L. So as a person who Project L is literally made for, here are some champion ideas that I came up with. This video will basically use the DNA format that was used for Illaoi. I would explain what DNA is, but it just added way too much bloat for this video, so I had to cut it. Read more about it in the dev blog if you want, but I think I did a pretty good job showcasing what DNA is throughout my champion ideas. Out of the 160 plus champions in the game, there's just one champion that screams out to me to be the perfect match for Project L. Urgot is a living legend to the downtrodden people of Zon that has lived by many titles. In the old Noxus, he was a headsman, an executioner of the weak. His mere presence squashed rebellions and infighting between the many warbands. To the Chem Barons of Zon's past, he was just another slave, another forgotten name sacrificed to the Chemtech mines under the city. To the slaves, he was the Dreadnought, their savior, who easily cracked open their cells and led them to freedom, sending their captors fleeing in terror. And to the downtrodden people of Zon, he is known as the Spider, their god, the only force making a difference to the masses, lifting the boot of Zon's oppressors off the neck of every common Zonite by slaughtering every single Chem Baron that is foolish enough to show themselves. Urgot's character core is a slow hulking abomination of flesh and weaponry that sends fear into the heart of his foes. Despite there being 14 champions in Zon, Urgot's the only champion to actually use Zon's green, rustic, and mechanical themes. There are some green champions, and there are some mechanical and rustic champions, but nobody in Zon is both. Nobody except for Urgot, and maybe Warwick, but he's a werewolf. There are 3 champions with Chemtech. Urgot, however, is the only champion to actually show what a Zonite Chemteched up for combat looks like. Renata is a mastermind that quite honestly doesn't even need Chemtech, and Warwick, well, most people forget that he even is Chemtech augmented, and he's a werewolf. As for body shape, well, Urgot has quite literally the most interesting body shape of any human champion, with his many mechanical legs and gun arm. If anything, Urgot might actually suffer being too different from everyone else, since how do you animate those legs jumping or make a clear knockdown state? And for his design, my favorite part, Urgot's gameplay goals would probably be along the lines of weapons, lots of them. Urgot single-handedly wields the most weapons out of any champion in League of Legends, and quite possibly in the canon of Runeterra. He has 6 shotguns in his legs, an explosive corrosive canister, a machine gun, and a chem drill, counting only his more traditional weapons. It would be a shame to include Urgot and not have him utilize his arsenal and not add more to it. He should be using different weapons for different purposes to cover many situations he could come across. Weak corrosive canisters to debuff and harass enemies hiding across the screen, medium to long range pokes can be done with the machine gun, and devastating close range damage with the shotguns. Urgot should play and feel like a living weapon. Pain is a tool. The whole crux of Urgot's arc from going from a slave into the man he is today is by accepting life's struggle and pain as a tool to push himself forwards. So he should either have armor on a lot of his moves, ignoring the pain and going through with his plans, or have a way to convert some sort of damage taken into damage dealt. This extra damage dealt will most likely only apply to specials where Urgot uses his one flesh hand, as in some sort of way, pain is Urgot's only connection to being human. Terrifying existence. Urgot's existence should be scary for his opponent. Urgot being up close should be the source of dread. Basically, I'm saying make him a grappler. Urgot's gameplay in League of Legends is already identical to the common grappler playstyle in fighting games. It's almost like that's the exact same reason why I play him. He is big, slow, and bulky, has a hard time getting in on his opponent, but has some long range normals that can harass people a bit. However, if the opponent's foolish enough to actually go in on Urgot, they are punished with a grab for massive damage. Urgot and Project L should emit the exact same sort of fear that Zangief or Potemkin creates from just being on screen. His design guardrails would be on the line of slow, slow, slow. Urgot is not in a rush. He will slowly get to his goal because he knows he has all the time in the world. Not to mention he has a lot of machinery weighing him down. In League of Legends, I'm pretty sure Urgot's the only champion in the game that can lower his movement speed for an indefinite amount of time. As when he is blasting people with his machine gun, his base movement speed is cut by so much he's actually the slowest character in the game, being slower than the teenage girl being weighed down by enough metal to make a horse, and the small midget that is used to sitting on a mount. So when I'm saying Urgot should be slow, I'm talking about slow to the level of Arc System big body grapplers, where they are the slowest walking and attacking characters and are literally missing movement mechanics to show how slow they are in comparison to the rest of the cast. A bit clunky. Despite having a lot of tools, I think they should be pretty specific in their use cases. Chemtech and lore is not that reliable and is pretty poorly constructed, hence why people in Zon can afford to use it. so giving Urgot's pokes a bit of startup and a bit of a large recovery can help sell the feeling that his tech is unreliable. Not to mention this is also a bit of design tenet of League of Legends Urgot, as his grapple move has a large startup and his shotgun knees aren't always available. Urgot shouldn't be able to spam his weaponry, except maybe the machine gun in some specific use cases, as they literally cannot handle that kind of strain, and not to mention, it takes time to reload. Easily zoned. Urgot has a history of losing fights to opponents that just run away and shoot at him with guns, locking him down in a single location. It has happened twice with Caitlyn. Also, this is his main weakness in League, as he has no real movement tools to catch up with somebody hitting him from a distance where his range tools are too awkward or inefficient. Not a zoner. Despite having range options, Urgot should be using these options to pressure the opponent on making a move on him, not keeping them away. Caustic canisters could be used at a range to pressure the opponent to do something quick, or give extra tools and value against them, but not do that much damage. Kinda like Taker's electric ball. Basically, Urgot's range tool should help push his game plan of getting his opponents closer to him, rather than keeping them at bay. However, the thing that worries me the most about Urgot is that his kit is a bit too awkward to be implemented into a fighting game. He's a man with a ton of range tools that wants the opponent to be close to him. To keep him true to his League of Legends playstyle, he has to be a big slow grappler. And let's face it, the devs behind the League of Legends fighting game really like Marvel, and the MVC slow grapplers are either garbage, I mean look at Zangief in Marvel vs Capcom 2, or pretty good anti-rush, I mean look at Hagar in Marvel vs Capcom 3. So here's hoping that Urgot's more of a Hagar than a Zangief. However, I don't think Urgot can feasibly play at the speed that Project L is going with without looking kinda goofy, not to mention that he would take up most of the screen. But I do think the boss could fill the role of the grappler of Project L pretty well. Half Noxian, half Ione Vistaya, the half-beast child Sett was fated to always be an outcast. Seen as an abomination by the Vistaya and human alike, the young halfling was forced to grow up quickly. With his Noxian father disappearing one day, he was an easy target to the ridicule of the many people that despise his existence. However, this all changed when Sett went to the Noxian fighting pits and learned that his father abandoned him and his mother. Filled with anger, Sett started competing in the pits, then became champion of the pits. Then drove the Noxians out and started owning the pits. Sett's character core is a resilient, scrappy brawler that uses his anger to empower himself. As a canon arena fighter that is used to fight in one-on-one fights or in small groups, Sett is basically made to be in a fighting game. 1v1s and 2v2s is literally what his character is about. Not including a pit fighter in the fighting game is just kind of insulting. Oh, sorry Alistar, but you don't really play into that fantasy at all? And Xin Zhao, you're not even associated with the arenas anymore? And Draven, well, Sett is very unique in League of Legends because he's one of the two champions that do not use weapons and instead fights with martial arts. Okay, technically Sett uses brass knuckles as a weapon, but he still uses hand-to-hand martial arts to fight. In fact, Sett's martial art style is the most interesting one to see in fighting games. The martial art of, I lack proper training so I'm just gonna kinda swing at you with my arms and hit you with my body. Or the most simpler turn, untrained brawling. Sett is also the only burly Ionian. I mean, compare Sett to like Master Yi or the Wind Brothers. Sett's gameplay design goals would most likely look something like this. Mad Grit. Sett is famous for being able to use his anger and pain to increase his effectiveness in fighting. His first lore story is about him using his anger from his father leaving the family behind and his mistreatment from being an abomination to climb the ranks of the arena and eventually own it. His second story is about killing a guy in a pit fight and how the pain he feels from almost losing the fight actually drives him to win it. Sett in League of Legends has a meter that grows when he takes damage that he can spend to gain a shield and deal more damage. So logically, he needs a rage mechanic. It's a large part of his character and identity. It doesn't even need to be lower HP means Sett does more damage. We can be smart about this. He could have a great resource that he could spend to add armor to his moves, or allow him to spend a lot of grit to allow him to do custom combos like in Street Fighter. Respect the boss. Sett is meant to be a terrifying fighter to face in the ring. While he is not the most trained and well-equipped fighter, his presence is enough to terrify his opponents into respecting his authority and combat options. The few that instead challenge Sett up close and in his domain leave the arena beaten and maimed. Basically, I'm saying make him a grappler please. As for his guardrails, they would look something like this. Extremely simple. Sett was deliberately designed to be a simple champion for League of Legends. Sett is also a simple guy fighting-wise. He doesn't actually know how to fight in a trained style. He just kind of punches them with all his strength and then he grabs people so he can punch them with all his strength. It would make zero sense if Sett started to do precision attacks of a trained master. No way in. Sett should have trouble getting in on opponents that outrange him or have projectiles. The only fight that we know of where Sett almost loses, he does so due to not being able to actually reach his opponent without getting sliced to pieces from his weird whip sword. Sett is also just a dude, so it makes sense that he has no super secret tool to get in on a guy that's shooting a gun at him without taking a bullet or two. Not to mention he gets kited pretty easily in League, and he has no real tools to stop it, other than running a bit faster and trying to reach them. So yeah, he would get shot. Look, this video is getting kind of long. Let's just put a range check on this because I still have one more character to go through, and Sett is just simple and should have good old grappler weaknesses and should be eaten alive by zoners. And these two champions, Urgot and Sett, are fine, but they're all just grapplers, and a fighting game is made of more archetypes than the big funny grab man. So what about something else? Somebody more unbreakable. Atreus was born into the Rakor tribe on the hostile steppes of Targon. Although he was raised to join the Rakor militant order, the Rahorak, Atreus was never the strongest warrior. While his peers could fight much better, move quicker, and pull off more techniques, nobody could match Atreus' resilience, and no one could stand back up from being defeated over and over again by their peers. And nobody else had the endurance nor resilience to trek the dangerous peak of Mount Targon to gain the power of the godlike aspects. However, the aspects on the peak of the mountain didn't see a warrior when Atreus approached. They saw a man who only knew the feat. The aspect of war, Pantheon, deemed Atreus unworthy to wield his power, so instead it possessed the man to pursue his own needs. However, Pantheon failed and left behind a broken body of the man who could always rise from defeat. And Atreus did rise up from Pantheon's defeat, and succeeded where the godlike aspect failed, as a mere mortal man who has known only defeat. Atreus, Pantheon? Okay, it's kinda weird what to call this guy because the man is Atreus, but everyone meta-wise knows him as Pantheon. So for the sake of something I'm gonna say later, let's just call the champion known as Pantheon Atreus, okay? So Atreus' character core is an unbreakable mortal warrior who inspires his allies and himself through incredible feats. Atreus is kind of in a weird spot, since his character has nothing to do with his League of Legends representation. Atreus in lore is all about getting up from defeat and the willpower of normal people. Atreus in game is all about jumping on one guy and instantly killing them with a few stabs of his spear. But there's just so many cool things you can do with Pantheon in a fighting game setting. I mean, there's not much to say about Atreus in this regard. He's just a dude with a spear and a shield and a Greco-Roman helmet. There's room for the Project L team to add a bit more, although the scar on his chest is kind of important since it's the scar that Pantheon left Atreus behind when he died. Fantasy-wise, I mean, he does appeal to the people who like the normal people fighting as an underdog against unsurmountable odds. Let's get over this quickly since I thought this video was going to be way shorter, but it seems like I can go on and on about League champions and fighting games. Who knew? Down but not out. Okay, this might be a slight meme goal, but Atreus is known to get back up from any failure. So logically, Atreus should have good wake up options. Be it a stupid invincible DP that doesn't completely cripple him on block. Wait, that sounds incredibly awful to deal with. Maybe Atreus can just have enhanced abilities on wake up? I don't know, I feel like I'm adding way too many comeback mechanics. Regardless, Atreus should feel like a champion that can change the flow of the fight even after eating a huge combo from the opponent. At least this is the fantasy sold in his story. The Leap. One of the most iconic part of Atreus' fighting style is his valiant heroic leaps. Be it when he leaped at Aatrox and sliced the demigod's arm off, or 30 seconds into a League game where he just stuns the enemy jungler during an invade and allows your team to get a huge gold advantage. Atreus should have a great air-to-air and air-to-ground game. I mean, it's not that hard to imagine since his air combat can just consist of just sticking his spear out mid-jump, and most champions would not be able to compete. A command leap would also be nice to implement the specific heroic jump towards the enemy that Atreus is known for. Basically, Atreus is not a slow grounded fighter. He should be jumping at the enemy and going all in. Mortal Will. Atreus' weapons are also a large part of how he fights, but the more important detail is that his weapons gain more power as he fights. His willpower and resilience has inspired those around him, and has powered up the weapons of a dead god. So here's what I would like to see with Atreus' gameplay core. Atreus should be a level up character. As bad as they normally go, he starts as Atreus with some not that useful dual weapons of a dead aspect. But as he starts to land hits and pushing the control of the match away from his opponent, his weapons start to power up, allowing him to gain extra properties on his attacks if spaced right. More damage if he hits with the blade hitbox of his spear, more hit stun if he hits really up close with the shield bash, and the like. With the power set of the aspect of war, Atreus should also get some sort of health regen as an extra payoff. I mean, come on, you have to play a level up character. Also, when power up this way, Atreus is not Atreus anymore, he's now Pantheon. The new Pantheon. The Pantheon that's a mortal man empowered by his will. Yes, I want a Pantheon install. Limits really quickly. Not a great fighter. Atreus was never known to be great at combat, so he shouldn't be doing any insane damage or combos without empowered weapons. Not his weapons. Atreus should work really hard to be able to tap into the true power of Pantheon's weapons. Even in League of Legends, Pantheon needs to work a bit to use the weapons to their full potential, and he's already fully powered. Jack of all trades. Atreus should be relegated as an aggressive Shoto that doesn't really shine anywhere without leveling up first. I mean, I didn't talk about Shotos anywhere, but his base kit is literally made out of the Shoto trifecta. Anyways, these are just some ideas that has just been brewing in my head for the past few days.